Hi, my name is Jana. I'm 34 years old. Right now, sitting here talking to you, I feel solid, like a rock, like I finally own the ground I stand on. But it wasn't always like this. For most of my life, I felt like a shadow, like a quiet helper in a play where I wasn't even a character, just part of the background noise. My story is about family, about the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, the ones you'd walk through fire for. But sometimes, those are the very people who hold the match, who watch you burn or worse, expect you to light yourself on fire to keep them warm. It's a story about realizing that the ties that bind you can also be the ropes that hang you. For years, I lived under a kind of spell, a silent agreement that my needs, my feelings, my very existence were secondary to, well, to everyone else's, but especially to my sister's. There was a constant hum of expectation, a soft pressure to give, to help, to understand, while receiving very little in return. It wasn't just emotional. It seeped into everything. My time, my energy, and yes, my money. I didn't see it clearly for the longest time. I just thought that was what family was. Sacrifice, putting others first, being the reliable one. But there's a difference between love and exploitation. And sometimes, that line gets blurred until you're standing on the wrong side, completely lost. My turning point wasn't one big explosion, not at first. It was a slow chipping away, a gradual erosion of my self-worth that culminated in a betrayal so clear, so stark, that it finally shattered the illusion I'd been living in. It forced me to look at the foundation of my most important relationships and realize they were built on sand, specifically, on my sand, which was constantly being shifted and taken away without my consent. It was devastating. It felt like grieving people who were still alive, like losing a home you were still standing in. The pain was physical, a tight knot in my chest, a constant tremor in my hands. I felt isolated, unseen, and deeply, profoundly alone, even surrounded by the people who were supposed to be my anchors. But that pain was also the catalyst. It forced me to stop being quiet, to stop people-pleasing, to start asking questions first of myself and then, finally, of them. It led to difficult conversations, heartbreak I never imagined, and ultimately, a journey of finding my own voice and building my own solid ground. So, I want to tell you my story, the full, messy, painful, and ultimately empowering truth of how I learned that sometimes walking away is the strongest way to stand up for yourself. How I stopped being a shadow and started taking up space. Have you ever felt like you were constantly giving, constantly overlooked, especially by the people closest to you? Have you ever felt that crushing weight of expectation, the one that says you're only valuable when you're being useful to someone else? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if any part of this resonates with you, it helps to know we're not alone in these kinds of battles. Now, let me take you back to when the ground started to tremble. My apartment in Belgrade wasn't large, but it was mine. I'd bought it 4 years prior with the savings I'd painstakingly built over a decade of working, first in administrative roles, then climbing the ladder in operations. Every dinar saved had a memory attached, skipped dinners out, delayed clothing purchases, extra hours logged. It represented my independence, my hard work, a quiet declaration that I could build something for myself. I was 34, a senior operations manager, successful by many standards, yet at home, in my family, I often felt like I was still 16, vying for approval I rarely received. Our family home, where my parents and younger sister Sophia still lived, was a 20-minute bus ride away. It was a comfortable house, full of memories, both good and complicated. Growing up, Sophia had always been the radiant one, the sensitive one, the one who needed protecting, needing help, needing attention. I was the responsible one, the capable one, the one who could handle things, the one who didn't need much, or so the narrative went. This narrative wasn't born of malice. Not exactly. but of a deep-seated pattern of favoritism that felt as natural to my parents as breathing. Sophia was 2 years younger, delicate, prone to dramatic pronouncements of illness or distress whenever faced with a challenge. My mother, especially, doted on her, shielding her from difficulty, making excuses for her shortcomings. My father, while less overtly involved in the emotional intricacies, went along with my mother's lead, seeing Sophia as the one requiring more support. I, meanwhile, was praised for my independence, my resilience, my ability to manage. Manage meant everything from managing my schoolwork without help, to managing family crises, to managing my own emotional needs in silence. The expectation to manage, to simply handle things, extended into adulthood and into my professional life. While Sophia drifted through various jobs, always needing financial top-ups from our parents, needing help with rent, needing someone to co-sign loans, I was the steady earner. And being the steady earner in my family came with its own unwritten responsibilities. It started small, asking me to pick up groceries on my way from work because Sophia was too tired or not feeling well. Lending small amounts of money for emergencies that never seemed to stop happening. Helping my mother with the heavy spring cleaning because Sophia had allergies. Driving them places because Sophia didn't like driving outside the city center. These were minor things, easily justified by family helping family. I told myself it was love, it was support, and I genuinely did love them. I wanted to help. But the requests grew, and the imbalance became starker. Sophia got engaged to Luca, a charming but equally aimless young man who was good at spending money, but not earning it. Suddenly, family obligations tripled. There were engagement parties to help pay for, furniture to buy for their new, rented apartment, car repairs, even covering their electricity bills occasionally because they'd forgotten. My mother would call, her voice laced with gentle urgency, explaining how Sophia and Luca were struggling, how they just needed a little help to get back on their feet. And I, conditioned to be the helper, the one who could manage, always said yes. My savings, the ones I had earmarked for renovations on my own small apartment, or maybe even a modest vacation, dwindled. When I hesitated once, mentioning my own expenses, my mother's tone shifted, becoming cool, disappointed. But Jana, she'd say, her voice tinged with sadness, they're family. Sophia is your sister. Don't you want to help your own sister when she's having trouble? The guilt was immediate, sharp. Of course, I did. What kind of sister would I be if I didn't? The unspoken comparison to Sophia, the fragile one who needed constant support, was always present. I didn't need the money like she did. I could earn it back. I could manage. So, I gave. I gave my time, driving them to look at wedding venues, spending weekends helping them paint their apartment while Sophia supervised from a chair, scrolling on her phone. I gave my energy, mediating arguments between Sophia and our mother, listening to endless complaints about Luca, about work, about life. And I gave my money, transferring amounts I increasingly couldn't afford to part with, justifying it as investing in family happiness. The wedding planning was a blur of stress, most of it landing on my shoulders and my mother's. Sophia had opinions, many, very specific and often expensive, but little interest in the logistics or effort required to bring them to life. My mother, caught between Sophia's demands and the practicalities, became increasingly reliant on me. I booked vendors, managed the guest list, designed the invitations, even baked half the pastries for the reception myself the day before the wedding because Sophia forgot to order enough and was too stressed to help. During all this, my own life felt paused. Dating was impossible. My evenings and weekends were consumed by wedding tasks or family emergencies. My apartment remained untouched, a testament to my deferred dreams. Friends saw less and less of me. I was tired, stressed, and increasingly resentful, but I buried it deep. This was family. This was what you did. You sacrificed. The wedding day arrived, a lavish affair that cost more than my entire annual salary, largely funded by my parents, but with significant loans and help from me. Sophia looked beautiful, radiant, the center of attention, just as she'd always been. My parents beamed, proud of their delicate daughter finally finding her place. Nobody commented on my exhaustion, my stained dress from the pastry marathon, the dark circles under my eyes. I was just there, the reliable backdrop. A few months after the wedding, my father had a health scare. It wasn't life-threatening, thankfully, but it was serious enough to require surgery and a significant recovery period. This shifted the family dynamic again. My mother became my father's primary caregiver, overwhelmed and stressed. Sophia, despite living closer and having a less demanding job, was suddenly unavailable. She had her own life, her own husband, her own stress. Naturally, the burden of support fell to me. Every evening after my demanding job, I would go to the family home. I cooked dinner, cleaned, did laundry, managed my father's medication schedule, sat with my parents, offering comfort and logistical support. My weekends were spent running errands, grocery shopping, deep cleaning the house, giving my mother a few hours of respite. Where was Sophia during all of this? She visited sporadically, usually for short periods, often bringing Luca, who ate the food I cooked and offered useless, generic platitudes. She complained about being tired, about how stressful it was seeing father sick, about her own minor ailments. She never offered to cook, clean, or stay for an entire evening. My mother would sigh. Sophia is too sensitive for this, Jana. She gets too upset. I remember one particularly difficult evening. I'd worked late, gone straight to my parents' house, cooked a meal, helped my father with his medication, and was cleaning the kitchen while my mother sat exhausted in the living room. Sophia called. I overheard my mother asking if she might be able to come over the next day to sit with father for a few hours so my mother could get some rest. Sophia's voice was clear, even through the phone. Oh, Mama, I can't. Luca and I are planning a weekend trip. We need to get away, you know? This has all been so stressful. Stressful for her. My blood ran cold. I was there, scrubbing pans, having spent every spare moment for weeks caring for our parents, while her stress manifested as needing a weekend getaway, leaving me to pick up the slack without question. Yet, my mother didn't push back. She just sighed again and said, "All right, darling, have a good time." That night, driving home in the quiet car, the city lights a blur of indifference. Something inside me fractured. It wasn't just about the chores, the money, the time. It was the inherent unfairness, the expectation that my life, my needs, my stress, simply didn't matter as much. I was the strong one, the capable one, which somehow translated into being the one whose boundaries could be effortlessly crossed, whose resources could be freely plundered, whose feelings could be ignored. The family home was a system, and I was the silent, invisible engine keeping it running, while Sophia was the prized, delicate ornament displayed on the mantelpiece, admired and protected, regardless of her contribution, or lack thereof. My father recovered, slowly. Life returned to a semblance of normal, but the fracture inside me remained. I started noticing things I had previously excused. The way my mother always asked Sophia first about her day, her plans, her problems, turning to me only for updates on work or practical matters. The way Sophia's minor achievements were celebrated enthusiastically, while my significant professional successes were met with a simple, "Ah, that's nice." Dear. The way my financial contributions were accepted silently, never acknowledged as sacrifices, while Sophia's occasional, small gestures of help were lauded as immense generosity. Then came the major betrayal, the one that broke the dam. It involved the family apartment building. My grandparents, on my father's side, had owned a small building with 3 apartments. They lived in one, and the other 2 were rented out, providing a modest income. When they passed away years ago, the building was inherited by my father and his sister. My father's share was 2/3, as he was the elder, and my aunt received 1/3. They decided to keep it in the family. My father took ownership of the ground floor apartment where my grandparents had lived, and the top two apartments remained jointly owned by him and my aunt, with the rental income split according to their shares. Over the years, my aunt's family grew, and they eventually needed the top floor apartment. An agreement was reached. My aunt would take sole ownership of the top floor apartment as her one-third share, and my father would take sole ownership of the remaining two apartments, the ground floor and the middle one, as his two-thirds share. This was formalized legally, deeds changed, etc. The middle apartment remained rented out. My parents had always told us that these two apartments, the ground floor and the middle one, were our inheritance. They would eventually pass to Sophia and me. They never specified how they would be divided, and I, naively, assumed it would be split equally, or perhaps in a way that made practical sense, maybe one apartment each, or selling one and splitting the money, or co-owning and splitting rental income. It was a future thing, something I didn't dwell on, focused as I was on building my own life, my own apartment. Until my father's health scare, it seemed to prompt my parents to finally put their affairs in order. One Sunday, during one of my usual visits, my mother brought it up. We were having coffee after lunch. Sophia wasn't there. She was busy with Luca. Jana, my mother started, her voice a little hesitant, which was unusual for her. Your father and I have been thinking about the apartments, your inheritance. My heart gave a small, hopeful flutter. Finally, clarity. Maybe they would set things up so the rental income from the middle apartment could help me financially, given how much I'd been helping them. Yes, Mama? I prompted, keeping my tone neutral. Well, she continued, fiddling with her coffee cup, you know how things are. Sophia and Luca, they struggle so much. It's hard for them to make ends meet. And with your father's health, we worry about them. I waited, a knot forming in my stomach. Where was this going? You, on the other hand. She looked at me, a hint of pride in her eyes, but it felt cold, transactional. You're so capable, dear. You have your good job, your own apartment. You manage so well. There it was, the familiar refrain, capability as a reason for neglect. So, she took a breath, we've decided that Sophia needs more help, more security. We've decided to sign over the middle apartment to her, completely, as her share of the inheritance. My mind went blank. The middle apartment, the one that brought in rental income, the one I had always assumed was part of a joint inheritance. And what about my share? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The ground floor apartment was occupied by my parents. Well, my mother said, her tone brightening slightly, as if this was the obvious fair part. You will inherit this apartment, our apartment, when we're gone. This apartment, the family home, the one where they lived, where I grew up, filled with decades of memories, furniture, and the potential complication of what to do with it when the time came, sell it. Keep it, divide the proceeds, and only when they were gone. Meanwhile, Sophia would get a fully rentable apartment, giving her immediate financial security and assets, now. The unfairness hit me like a physical blow. Sophia, the sensitive one, the one who contributed little and received much, would get a significant, liquid asset, freely given to her now because she needed it more. I, the capable one, the one who had sacrificed my time, energy, and finances for years to support the family, would get the family home, laden with emotional baggage and practical difficulties, only in the distant future. It wasn't an equal division. It wasn't even a fair division based on need, if they truly believed Sophia needed more. The middle apartment alone was worth significantly more than half of the family home, considering its condition, location, and rental potential compared to the older, larger family house, which would likely need major renovations. It was a clear statement of who was valued more, who was deemed more deserving of immediate, tangible support. It was the culmination of years of subtle favoritism, now laid bare in a concrete financial decision. So, I repeated, my voice trembling slightly, Sophia gets the apartment that gives her an income now, and I get the apartment I can only inherit after you're gone. And then have to figure out what to do with? My mother looked surprised by my reaction. But Jana, it's the family home. It's full of memories, and you have your own apartment already. Sophia doesn't. This just makes things more even. Even? This was their twisted definition of even. Giving the one who needed it less, in terms of self-sufficiency, not perceived need, a valuable, income-generating asset outright, while giving the one who had been the family's silent backbone a deferred, less liquid asset. Even? I felt a surge of anger, hot and unfamiliar. Mama, I've been helping Sophia and Luca financially for years. I've spent every evening and weekend here for weeks caring for Papa, helping you, while Sophia was off living her life. My savings are gone because I helped pay for the wedding, helped them with their rent, their bills. And now, her reward for struggling is a free apartment, while my reward for being capable and constantly giving is the promise of this house, someday. My mother's face hardened. The hesitant look vanished, replaced by that familiar, disappointed disapproval. Don't make this about money, Jana. That's not what family is about. We're just trying to help your sister. She needs it. You're strong. You don't need this kind of help. It's not about just money, Mama. It's about everything. It's about how I'm always expected to give, to sacrifice, to be the strong one who needs nothing, while Sophia is always the one who needs everything and gets everything. It's not fair. The words tumbled out, years of suppressed resentment finding their voice. My mother stood up, her posture stiff. Fair? We've always done our best. We've given you everything you needed. We raised you. This is not how you speak to your mother. You're being selfish. Your sister is your family. You should be happy she's getting some security. Selfish. The ultimate weapon. Anytime I expressed a need, set a boundary, or questioned the imbalance, I was labeled selfish. Selfish? I echoed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Is it selfish to want to be seen, to want my contributions to matter, to want my own financial future to be considered after I've spent years propping up someone else's? The argument escalated. My father came out, drawn by the raised voices. He listened for a moment, then sided immediately with my mother. Jana, your mother is right. Sophia needs this. You're doing well. Be grateful for what you have. Don't cause trouble. Trouble. Asking for basic fairness was causing trouble. I looked at their faces, my mother, rigid with disapproval, my father, weary and dismissive. I saw not love, but expectation. Not gratitude, but entitlement. Not recognition, but the comfortable assumption of my perpetual availability and infinite resources. The betrayal wasn't just the unequal inheritance. It was the cold dismissal of my feelings, the immediate resorting to guilt and manipulation, the reinforcement of the decades-old narrative that Sophia was the deserving one, the needy one, and I was merely the resource, the backdrop, the one who could manage, and therefore required nothing. I couldn't stay there anymore. The air felt thick with their judgment and my pain. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't do this right now, I stammered, my voice thick with unshed tears. So you're just leaving? My mother asked, her voice icy. Leaving after I tried to explain things to you? Leaving your parents? Yes, I said, finding a flicker of strength in the rubble of my emotions. Yes, I'm leaving. I walked out of the apartment, out of the family home, leaving their shocked faces behind. The bus ride back to my apartment was a blur of tears. I cried for the unfairness, for the years of being overlooked, for the shattering of the illusion of a loving, equitable family. I cried for the little girl who always tried her best and was never quite enough. For days, I was a mess. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly. The knot in my chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. The betrayal replayed in my mind endlessly. The words, the tones, the dismissive waves of their hands. I felt foolish, naive, for having given so much, for having believed that my efforts would eventually lead to recognition, to balance, to reciprocal love. My mother called the next day, not to apologize, but to reiterate her position, adding layers of guilt. "Sophia is very upset that you're angry," she'd say. "This is making your father ill again." It was the standard script. Blame me. Use someone else's perceived suffering as leverage. Deflect from the actual issue. I kept the conversation short, my responses flat. Sophia called too, sounding bewildered. "Jana, why are you so mad? It's just an apartment." "Mama says you think we don't deserve it." She genuinely seemed to not grasp the depth of my pain, the history it represented, the years of imbalance culminating in this act. Or perhaps she did grasp it, on some level, and chose willful ignorance because it was inconvenient. My initial instinct was to retreat, to lick my wounds in private, to try and absorb this blow like I had absorbed all the others. But this time felt different. The pain was too sharp, the injustice too blatant. Something fundamental had shifted. The illusion was gone. I saw the system for what it was, a carefully maintained structure where my role was to be the dependable, exploitable resource, and their role was to consume that resource while simultaneously making me feel guilty for ever questioning it. I talked to my closest friend, Lena. She listened patiently, her face filled with concern. As I poured out the story, the years of small slights, the constant giving, the final betrayal, she validated my feelings, echoing the unfairness I felt. "Jana," she said gently, "they've been taking advantage of you for years. This inheritance thing is just the clearest example. You are not selfish for wanting to be treated fairly, for wanting your own life, your own resources." Her words were a lifeline. Hearing someone outside the system confirm my reality was crucial. It wasn't just me being sensitive, being selfish, it was real. I started reading about family dynamics, about toxic families, about boundaries, about emotional exploitation. The books and articles described my family with unnerving accuracy. The golden child, Sophia, the scapegoat, resource me, the enabler parent, my mother. The passive, complicit parent, my father. It was like a veil was lifted. I wasn't a bad daughter, a bad sister. I was in a dysfunctional system that had assigned me a specific, unvalued role. The realization was empowering, but also terrifying. Seeing the truth meant I couldn't unsee it. It meant that the comfortable, if painful, status quo was no longer an option. To protect myself, to heal, I had to change the dynamic. And changing the dynamic in a system resistant to change inevitably meant conflict. I decided I needed space. Not just physical space, but emotional and mental space from the constant pressure, the guilt, the expectations. I stopped going to the family home every evening. I limited my phone calls. When my mother called with a request for help or money for Sophia, I started saying no. The first no was the hardest. My mother called, needing money for Sophia's car repair, another emergency. My stomach clenched, my heart pounded. Every cell in my body screamed at me to say yes, to avoid the inevitable disapproval, but I remembered the inheritance conversation, the feeling of being a resource, not a person. "I can't, Mama," I said, my voice shaking slightly. A beat of silence, then, sharp and cold, "You can't, or you won't." I I don't have the money right now," I lied, a remnants of the old pattern clinging to me. "But you just got your salary. You have a good job, Jana. This is Sophia, your sister. Are you really going to leave her stranded?" The guilt trip. I took a deep breath. "Mama, I have my own expenses, my own apartment. I've helped Sophia many times in the past, but I can't keep doing it. I need to save for my own future." "Your own future? What about your family? Is that not important to you? Your sister needs you." "And I need to be able to live my own life, Mama. I can't keep putting myself last. I'm sorry, but I can't help with this." My voice was stronger now, steadier. The conversation ended quickly after that. with my mother making her disappointment abundantly clear. I hung up, trembling, but also relieved. It was a small no, cloaked in a partial lie, but it was a step. It was the first brick in a new boundary wall. The pushback was intense. My parents couldn't seem to comprehend my refusal to fall back into my assigned role. They alternated between guilt-tripping, painting me as an uncaring, selfish daughter, and passive aggression, sighing heavily on the phone, talking about how hard things were without my help. Sophia was confused, then annoyed. She felt entitled to my support, having never known a time when it wasn't readily available. "But Jana, you always helped," she'd say, genuinely perplexed. "Why are you changing now? Are you mad at me?" "It's not about being mad, Sophia," I tried to explain, calmly. "It's about balance. I can't be the only one giving all the time. I have my own life, my own needs. But you don't have kids, or a husband, or money worries like we do. You have it easy." Her words stung. Easy? My life wasn't easy. It was built on hard work, careful management, and years of sacrificing my own wants and needs to help them. The invisible labor, the emotional toll, the financial drain, none of that registered with her. My perceived lack of dependence somehow disqualified my needs. I realized trying to explain the deep systemic issues to them was pointless. They were too invested in the existing dynamic. They saw my shift not as reclaiming my autonomy, but as a betrayal of them, a disruption of their comfortable system. Setting boundaries wasn't a one-time event. It was a continuous process, met with resistance at every turn, saying no to last-minute requests, not immediately answering the phone if they called multiple times in a row, refusing to lend money, limiting the frequency of visits. Each boundary I set felt like a battle, leaving me exhausted but also incrementally stronger. I sought professional help. A therapist helped me understand the family patterns more deeply, validated my experiences, and equipped me with tools to navigate the guilt and manipulation. She helped me see that my worth wasn't tied to my usefulness to my family, that I was inherently valuable, deserving of respect and care, regardless of whether I fit into their predefined box. The process of redefining my relationship with my family was painful. There were arguments, tears, and periods of strained silence. My mother would give me the silent treatment for days. My father would express his disappointment. Sophia would oscillate between passive aggression and bewildered hurt. At one point, during a particularly difficult conversation where I tried, again, to express my feelings about the unequal inheritance and the years of imbalance, my mother said something that solidified my resolve more than anything else. "We gave Sophia the apartment because she is the one who needs us," she said, her voice tight with emotion, bordering on accusation. "You never needed us, Jaina. Not like she did. You always managed on your own." There it was. The core belief. My independence, my capability, which they had praised when it suited them, was now the reason for my exclusion. Because I didn't exhibit constant neediness, because I didn't rely on them in the same visible, demanding ways Sophia did, they interpreted it as not needing their love, their support, their resources. My quiet strength was penalized. Sophia's overt fragility was rewarded. It was a devastating thing to hear, confirming that my value in their eyes was inversely proportional to my ability to stand on my own 2 feet. But it was also liberating. It cut through the confusion. This wasn't about who loved whom more. It was about their own needs, their need to be needed, their comfort with the established roles, and their unwillingness to see me as a fully formed adult with my own struggles and needs, separate from their narrative. Accepting that my parents might never truly see or validate my experience was perhaps the hardest part. The hope for their understanding lingered for a long time, a stubborn little flame. But with each boundary crossed, each manipulative phone call, each dismissive comment, that flame flickered and died. I began to accept that the family I wanted, the equitable, mutually supportive family I longed for, did not exist. At least, not with them in their current state. The distance grew, not just physically, but emotionally. Visits became rare, strained affairs. Phone calls were brief and superficial, carefully navigating around potential triggers. I mourned the loss of the family I thought I had, grieving the connection that felt severed, even while the people were still alive. It was a unique kind of pain, a ghost limb ache for a relationship that was fundamentally flawed from the start. But in the space that opened up, I started to build something new. For the first time in years, my evenings and weekends were mine. I reconnected with Lena and other friends. I started pursuing hobbies I had abandoned. I focused on my career, not as a distraction, but as a path I was choosing for myself, for my growth, not just to be the capable daughter. I started saving money again, this time with a fierce protectiveness. This was my security, built by my efforts, not to be siphoned off for someone else's perceived needs. I spent time in my own apartment, really making it my home, painting the walls, choosing furniture, creating a sanctuary that was solely mine, free from the expectations and history of the family house. It was a physical manifestation of my growing sense of self-possession. There were moments of doubt, waves of guilt that threatened to pull me back under. Holidays were particularly difficult. The pressure to conform, to pretend everything was okay, was immense. For a while, I tried to attend family gatherings, navigating the awkwardness, the thinly veiled passive aggression, but the emotional cost was too high. I would leave feeling depleted, angry, and questioning my choices. Eventually, I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't participate in rituals that reinforced my pain and their denial. Missing family celebrations was difficult, and it further cemented the narrative of me being the difficult, uncaring one. But the peace I found in opting out, the preservation of my emotional energy, was worth the cost of their disapproval. The relationship with Sophia became distant. Without me as the constant buffer and provider, her dynamic with our parents shifted, though I didn't witness it directly. She sometimes expressed resentment that I wasn't there to help them, or her. I responded with calm detachment. I had spent years being her safety net. It was time for her to build her own. My relationship with my parents settled into a polite, surface-level connection. We spoke occasionally, discussing neutral topics. The deep emotional connection, the easy intimacy, was gone. It was a quiet grief, a constant low hum beneath the surface of my new, calmer life. But it was a necessary separation. I had to disconnect from the unhealthy dynamic to connect with myself. The unequal inheritance remained a symbol of the betrayal, but its power over me diminished. It was a tangible manifestation of their values, their priorities. Accepting that allowed me to stop craving their validation, their approval, their equitable distribution of resources or love. I learned to provide those things for myself. My worth wasn't determined by a will, it was determined by my own integrity, my resilience, my ability to build a life based on my own values. I realized that the capability they had always pointed to as a reason to give me less was, in fact, my greatest asset. But it was my asset, not theirs to exploit. I had managed because I had to, because no one was managing for me. That self-sufficiency wasn't a deficit of need, but a testament to my strength. And now, I would use that strength to build a life that nourished me, rather than depleted me. There were times when the loneliness was intense. Cutting ties or significantly reducing contact with family is a profound loss, regardless of how flawed the relationships were. Society tells us family is everything, that you should always try to make it work. But sometimes, making it work means sacrificing yourself, and that's a price too high to pay. I learned that building your chosen family, surrounding yourself with people who see you, value you, and reciprocate your love and support, is just as, if not more, important. Slowly, painstakingly, I pieced myself back together. I learned to trust my own judgment, to listen to my own intuition, which had been silenced for so long by the noise of family expectations and guilt. I learned to say no without guilt, to prioritize my well-being, to recognize my own needs as valid and important. The woman who emerged from the wreckage of those relationships was different. She was stronger, clearer, fiercely protective of her boundaries and her peace. The fear of their disapproval, which had controlled me for so long, lost its grip. I wasn't afraid of being called selfish anymore. I wasn't afraid of disappointing them. My primary responsibility was to myself. The process wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, relapses into old patterns of thinking. But the core shift remained. I had seen the truth, and I couldn't unsee it. I had tasted freedom, and I couldn't go back to the cage. Years passed. My relationship with my family remained distant but civil. The inheritance became a non-issue in my mind. I had built my own financial security, independent of their validation or assets. Sophia still had the apartment, and the challenges that came with managing it, and her life. My parents were older, still prone to seeing the world through their established lens, but without my constant presence to prop up the old dynamic, things had shifted for them too, though not in ways I was privy to or, frankly, responsible for anymore. I focused on my career, continued to build my relationships with friends, and eventually, I met someone who saw me, the real me, appreciated my strength, and respected my boundaries. Building a healthy relationship outside of my family dynamic was a powerful part of my healing journey, showing me what reciprocal love and respect truly felt like. The scars remained, subtle reminders of the pain and the battle, but they weren't debilitating. They were markers of resilience, proof of how far I had come. I had been overlooked, exploited, and betrayed by the people who were supposed to be my safe harbor. But I had navigated the storm, found my own shore, and built a new, sturdier vessel. My story isn't unique. So many people, especially women, find themselves in similar roles within their families: the caregiver, the listener, the financial support, the one who silently carries the burden while others are seemingly favored. The unseen labor, the emotional toll, the expectation that your life is infinitely flexible and your resources endlessly available. It's a pattern woven into the fabric of many families. Breaking free is hard. It requires challenging deeply ingrained beliefs about loyalty, duty, and love. It requires facing the possibility of losing relationships that, however flawed, were central to your life. It requires sitting with immense pain and grief. But it is also possible. It is necessary for survival, for reclaiming your identity, for building a life where you are not just a supporting character, but the protagonist of your own story. My journey from being the overlooked, exploited daughter and sister to a woman who stands in her own power was the most difficult, but also the most important, journey of my life. It wasn't about becoming CEO or achieving external success as defined by the world, though I did find success in my career as well. It was about becoming CEO of my own life, my own emotional landscape, my own worth. It was about finally saying, not just to them, but to myself, I see you, I value you, you are enough. And you deserve to be loved and treated with respect, not because of what you can do for others, but simply because you are you. So, that's my story. It's not a neat fairy tale ending where everyone understands and apologizes. That's not usually how these things work in real life. It's messier, quieter, a continued process of maintaining boundaries and tending to my own well-being. But I am free. Free from the weight of expectation, the sting of unfairness, the constant need to prove my worth. I built my own life, brick by painstaking brick, and it is strong and beautiful in its authenticity. If you're watching this, and you see pieces of your own story in mine, know that you are not alone. Your feelings are valid. Your desire for fairness and respect is not selfish. And you have the strength within you to reclaim your own life, one boundary at a time, one brave step after another. Thank you for listening. It means a lot to share this with you. If any part of my story resonated with you, please give this video a like. And if you want to hear more about setting boundaries, dealing with difficult family dynamics, or rebuilding your sense of self, consider subscribing to my channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Sharing our stories is how we heal, and how we show others they aren't walking this path alone. Remember, your worth is not up for negotiation. Take care of yourselves. From Belgrade, with newfound peace.